The first thing that we have to do in the process of the restoration is to remove the lacquer and the oxidisation. To do this, we will be using a polisher sander and undertaking this with a 220 grit sanding disc to remove the main surface, and then finishing it with a 400 grit sanding disc. For the more severely damaged areas, I use the 60 grit sanding disc. Due to the enormity of the piece, it took 4 weeks, 8 hours a day to sand the entire surface of the sculpture. The design and the construction of the scaffold was very important in that it allowed me to reach all the surfaces of the sculpture safely and with ease and in a dry environment. To achieve the desired patina, I'm using a very weak mix of potassium sulfide in water. I'm going to use approximately 10 grams of the chemical with about 8 to 10 litres of water. What's quite important with the application of patina on something this size is to get the whole surface covered in one hit, really, so that it doesn't dry, you're not build double layering areas. You're creating a nice even patina, which is what we want on this. We want a little bit of depth of colour in there, but we want to be able to control the evenness of the colour. It's quite important to be able to see where you've been. We don't want the colour to be too flat, so a little bit of patterns on the surface. Otherwise, if the colour's too flat, it kind of kills the sculpture somewhat. So here I'm just working back the colour to try and make it a little bit more even, so we have some highlights and some lowlights. If we leave it too dark, it becomes a little bit too intense, so I can blend the colour a little bit, lay the colour down, work it off, so we gradually develop a nice sort of gold, but warm gold patina on there. And gradually, if you leave it too long on there, you'll end up with very, very deep, dark areas, which all right for some things, but it wants to be a nice, soft, warm looking patina, which is something you have to work quite fast. Sometimes, dependent whether or not the colour takes, it can take a long time, but this appears to be working quite nicely and quite fast. And what you have to make sure you do is, once you rub back, you take back off all the excess, because that still contains the chemicals that will patinate and carry on going. Along with trying to keep the flow going down to try and not have too thick a build-up of layers, it's very important to work from the top down. So any drips that are created, you're wiping away straight away. Otherwise you could be working in one area, the drips come down and you come back to go over it, and again you've got a double layer. So as the drips come down, you immediately come straight into the area and work the area again. So you're not having any areas that have too many layers. Because the bronze is an alloy, it's made up of various different metals and minerals. And that tends to have an effect on areas of the bronze, because in the liquid state some of the metals tend to separate. So here we have an area of tin that's floated to the surface. It reacts with the chemicals in a slightly different way. Sometimes it will absorb the colour a little more, others times it will push the colour away. Also we have the weld here, which will take the colour in a slightly different way, because the welded bronze is a different density to the cast bronze. So it's actually absorbing it because it's a much tighter surface, so it's absorbing the colour slightly more. So sometimes we have to work that surface a little bit more, abrade it a little bit more, soften the colour so it blends in with the whole thing. The final process we're going to do on the restoration of the figure in the shelter is to apply a wax polish, a wax coating. This will not only protect the patina, it will also allow the patina to breathe somewhat and to further develop over time. The wax that I'm using is a sort of 50-50 mix of a neutral and a clear Liberon paste wax, which is primarily a beeswax. What I'm doing with it, I'm softening it down with white spirit so I can then apply with a cloth. The idea is that with it being white spirit based, it sinks into the patina, so it'll give a little bit more intensity into the colour. The next phase on is to polish off the wax. Normally I would use a brush and a cloth. This means that I can put decent pressure on and I can polish things in, and I can almost scrub the surface to activate the wax. Generally this is done on something which has a little bit of texture, so what tends to happen is the wax gets caught into the little texture marks, so you're scrubbing it out with the brush. This might work for this, but generally because it is such a smooth surface, and what I have been doing over the rest of it is machining it. But what I'll do is I'll show you with the brush and the cloth first, then we'll go in and we'll machine it as well. Okay. Okay, so now I'm going to show you the use of the sander, the polisher. Okay, and we can look at the difference.